During a friendly dialogue before a Memphis church audience, Christians were told to go to Dr. Qadhi if they want to learn from his clear teachings on questions like who speaks for Islam and how Islamic is ISIS. But it just so happens that Dr. Qadhi was quite untruthful and perhaps even deceptive right after the audience was told to seek education from him.
ISIS at max has 15 to 20,000 people in that cult and that movement. If you do the math, out of 1.6 billion people, this crazy caliph has called the entire Muslim world to come and said, join us, I am the true caliph. If out of 1.6 billion, barely 15,000 have taken up that call, do the math, and I did it, 0.0003%. You are going to consider 0.00003% to be the normative.
Here, Dr. Qadhi makes the claim that since there are only 15,000 ISIS fighters, this must mean that the vast majority of Muslims rejects their Sharia state. This argument is misleading, because it implies that millions of Muslims should be in the Islamic State's army before we can call it Islamic. But have you ever heard of a country with, let's say, 20 million soldiers? Especially when we consider the fact that ISIS controls a population of no more than 2 million people, it makes no sense to claim they should have millions of soldiers. Any country or state in the world will only have a tiny fraction of its population enlisted in the army. For instance, the Netherlands has a military staff that equals 0.25% of the 17 million people living inside its borders. So the real question should be, how many soldiers does ISIS need? And is jihad a universal duty upon Muslims, like praying and fasting, or a collective one, meaning that when a group of Muslims takes up the task, all other Muslims are exempt from this duty? Let's dig a little deeper and find out if there's any reasoning behind Dr. Qadhi's claims. Dr. Qadhi stated that the maximum number of ISIS fighters is 15 to 20,000. There is no way for him to know what the exact maximum currently is, but let's assume he's right. He then compares the number of soldiers to the entire world population of Muslims. But why? Do we compare the Chinese military to the total number of Chinese people in the world? The two statistics simply have nothing to do with each other. The size of any army is relative to the population of the state they are serving. So to suggest that ISIS needs tens of millions of soldiers to be able to be called Islamic, even though the population of the area they control is about 2 million, makes no sense whatsoever. As I mentioned, a much more rational approach to this issue would be to compare the number of ISIS fighters to the total population they're actually trying to control. Let's use statistics from September 2015. The most careful estimates suggest that ISIS at that time had a maximum of 18,000 soldiers. If we compare this to the population of 2.2 million people they were controlling at that time, this comes down to 0.8% being soldiers. This is more than 3 times the relative amount of soldiers enlisted by the Netherlands. And this makes sense, seeing that ISIS is both being attacked and seeks expansion through the attack on other surrounding areas. Would ISIS like to have more fighters? Of course they would. But could they handle the millions of soldiers Dr. Qadhi is claiming they should get if they were truly Islamic? Of course not. Logistically and management-wise, it would be impossible to have tens of millions of soldiers control a population of only 2.2 million. Not only that, it would be absolutely nonsensical to do so. Now, is this just an honest mistake on the part of Dr. Qadhi? We have reason to doubt this because of the Islamic jurisprudence that exists on this very matter. You see, jihad in the sense of military conflict is a collective duty upon Muslims and not a universal one. If you read books by renowned scholars of Sharia, such as Ibn Rushd and Al-Nawawi, or you simply go online and visit the Oxford Dictionary of Islam, you'll see that this collective duty, Fard al-Kifaya in Arabic, means that if enough members in the Muslim community discharge the obligation, the remaining Muslims are freed from the responsibility. So when Dr. Qadhi suggests that the seemingly low number of ISIS soldiers clearly proves that the Muslim world massively rejects ISIS, he is painting a very misleading picture. In fact, the truth is that millions of Muslims enlisting to join the ISIS army at the same time would be un-Islamic. But it gets worse. Although Dr. Qadhi claims he did the math himself, the numbers he gives the audience don't seem to make any sense whatsoever.
If out of 1.6 billion, barely 15,000 have taken up that call, do the math. And I did it, 0.00003%. You are going to consider 0.00003% to be the normative.
He first claims that 15,000 ISIS fighters comes down to 0.0003% of the entire Muslim population. Then, when he repeats the argument for emphasizing purposes, he suddenly adds another zero. So which is it? It sure sounds extremely low, but what happens when we actually do the math? Since we can't ask Dr. Qadhi which of these percentages he meant to give the audience, let's look at both figures. 0.0003% of 1.6 billion Muslims equals 4,800 ISIS fighters, and not 15,000. And 0.00003% would equal 480 ISIS fighters. Again, not 15,000. So his own calculation doesn't even come close to what he says it should add up to. In reality, 15,000 fighters compared to 1.6 billion people should result in a percentage that is much higher, namely 0.00094%. Again, nowhere near the percentage Dr. Qadhi gave us. This can only mean two things. Either he made it up on the spot, or he remembered the percentage incorrectly. Either way, this was false information before a church audience. Where he probably got the information from is not his own research, as he claimed, but a popular online video called 10 Lies You Were Told About Islam. This claims the percentage of all jihadists to be 0.006625%. When we translate this percentage into numbers, it shows to be 20 times larger than the highest number Dr. Qadhi claimed for ISIS. In any case, we've already seen that even if the calculations would have been accurate, the argument itself is misleading. It makes no sense to compare the entire Muslim population to the army of a small state. Surely, historically accepted Islamic states, like the Ottoman Empire, did not have an army which encompassed the majority of the male Muslim population in the entire world. So then why would Dr. Qadhi suggest that ISIS needs that kind of an army during its infancy years? Presenting statistics this way is something Muslim apologists have done many times over the years. This is why we have been emphasizing the necessity of fact-checking every such statement they make, especially when it looks logical at first glance. Thank you for watching, and God bless.